freight efficiency with NACFE's Mike Roche and Friends.
Here in episode 99, we have joining us Jim Castelaz. Jim is the founder and chief technology and revenue officer at Motiv Electric Trucks, where we talk about why he started Motiv and why he feels like we are at an inflection point with EVs today. He also shares his thoughts on the importance of being clear on vocabulary and terms, and from learning about what went well and what didn't. Finally, he talks about the 3 key metrics of electric vehicles, and he reminds us to not lose sight of the wins. Today we have joining us Jim Castelaz. He's founder and chief technology and revenue officer at Motiv Electric Trucks. Excited to have you on today, Jim.
Very happy to be here, Mike. Thanks for having me.
So we're going to chat today about not only the trucks, but kind of where we're at in electrification and sort of like where we've been and where we're going, because I think you just bring some really cool perspectives. Of course, I always have to ask, how did we become friends? Do you remember, Jim?
Full disclosure, I have to say I don't remember, but it could have been, at one of the many trade shows, Work Truck Week, maybe even back in the day, H-Tough, if you remember that one. But yeah, I mean, yeah. I think you just seem to be everywhere in the industry, Mike. So
usually I'm able to figure out, or my guest, one of us is able to figure out a moment that we can point back to. But yeah, I mean, H-Tough, wow, that was ahead of its time. We may say that a few times during this half hour. So, my journey on electric trucks, started with a company called Modec. So, wow, this goes back, a long time ago. But when I was at Navistar, the last job I had there was advanced engineering. And, a couple of us, and I'm not sure why, but a couple of us went to UK and met with Modec, probably 2007 or 8. And that was really, a van that doesn't look that much different than some of the, electric skateboard kind of trucks of the day. Navistar actually kind of put that in production, calling it the E-Star. You remember that? What's your thoughts about that model? And let's just use that to go back in time a ways.
Yeah, definitely a truck ahead of its time. I think about the E-Star when I see the Bright Drop. Doesn't it look like, I feel like there's a little similarity there.
Yeah, or even, I don't want to call it a Rivian, but yeah, a lot
maybe.
Yeah.
I remember seeing one of those when I moved to Alameda. This was probably 15 years ago, and I saw one driving by, and I remember I had to run out and stop the driver, and he liked it, right? I mean, they ran pretty well, but definitely ahead of their time. It was interesting. I think even then, like just figuring out how drivers are going to react to electric trucks, and a lot of good early learning.
How did you get into this? And sort of what was your first electric commercial vehicle work? And, what did you think about it then?
Well, I mean, it's a big challenge. So I moved to commercial vehicles. This was probably circa 2009. Before that, I was in school, honestly, and looking at fossil fuel consumption across different vehicle classes, was actually looking at electric motorcycles for a little while. They don't consume a lot of fuel, though, really. I guess that kind of pushed me to the other end of the vehicle size spectrum, up to commercial vehicles. Really, and started Motiv at that time with our vision of free fleets from fossil fuel. Looking at this really hard challenge. It was about the same time where some of my grad school colleagues were, transitioning from a solar car team to a startup called Tesla that was focused on passenger cars, right? And that was pretty revolutionary back then when they had that, that Lotus frame that they used for the Roadster. And looking at the opportunity, I still think commercial vehicles, there are a few things that really make, especially these medium duty vehicles, ripe for electrification, planned routes, return to depot every night. And so, it's been a long and interesting road to help that segment of the transportation industry try and, develop some fuel independence, really.
Yeah, sometimes when I talk to, I guess what I would call entrepreneurs and somebody trying to solve a problem or work on something that hasn't been done before and so forth, they get frustrated that it's just taken too long. So, we'll get into this more detail, but this moment now where, I heard from Amazon yesterday, they've deployed, I think they said 23,000 Rivians. It feels like this is ready to start taking off. But that's 15 years ago that you and I both shared here in the last few minutes, real work on kind of commercial electric vehicles. Does it feel like a long time, or is that just like in your particular personal view, is it taking a long time, or it just gonna take a long time, you know?
It's been really hard to kind of put out a crystal ball on this, right? I remember in 2009, I had projections that, 20% of the industry would be electric, in medium duty by 2015, and that clearly didn't happen. And heavy commercial has always kind of lagged passenger car and technology adoption, and I think it will probably continue to for a number of structural reasons, probably. But that being said, it really does feel like there's kind of this inflection point occurring now, and maybe a small part is regulatory. I think sustainability mandates and ESG goals
Yeah.
have a lot to do with it, but also I think the products are much better than they were 5 years ago, and we're getting more range, more capability out of these electric trucks, and I think that fleets are kind of seeing that, and they're still expensive, but the fuel cost savings is substantial, and so yeah, it's taking a long time. The industry takes a long time, but major changes. It's a structural change to the whole economy, right? And these fleets that have to electrify, what a challenge, right? I mean, a good opportunity to lead and kind of innovate if fleets kind of take that opportunity. But it's tough. It's not just the vehicle; it's the whole ecosystem that changes.
But I do think you just said it well. I mean, you think about like things like NOx and emissions controls have gotten pretty complex and expensive. Fuel has, I quoted some numbers the other day around how many weeks since in the last 10 years has fuel been over $4 a gallon, and how many has it been over $3 a gallon? And that's expensive. Hard to find technicians to repair things. Drivers' expectations around a quieter, smoother ride. I mean, battery technology. I mean, like there's like I just rattled off five or six. There's probably another dozen of things that I think are sort of coming together, both on maybe the demand side and the supply side to make this electric vehicles definitely in the space that you're participating in medium duty, where it feels like there's no showstoppers anymore. Now it's education, supply chain, program management, and this is going to happen. I think we'll have 20% in you know 5 years, like you might have said in '09, but here in 2024, definitely feels that way.
Yeah, it does. I mean, one of our fleet customers just noted they save 50% on fuel costs moving to electric, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be a more and more common story. And the challenges aren't really fundamentally technology challenges anymore, right? It's more about execution. It's the block and tackle. It's figuring out where you're going to park the trucks, and where the charge stations are going to be located, and what needs to change about your route planning and mapping to optimize the electric truck versus the fossil fuel truck. So yeah.
Part of this transformation is just understanding the new thing. And I even like how we measure things, what our language is. The other day, I was with someone, and kind of a key industry person, and he misrepresented kilowatts and kilowatt hours. And I'm like, we should know better than this. And then I'm like, well, no, because we haven't had to deal with these things.
It's this whole new vocabulary, right? I'm a Sparky by training, an electrical engineer, so I kind of come into some of those terms, just through kind of my background. But I think it's like when you really just take a step back and think about it, a kilowatt versus a kilowatt hour, like that's not obvious at all, right? And I think just understanding that clears up half of the dilemmas fleets face around charge infrastructure. Looking at the difference between its power versus energy, right? And so I think it's one is the size of your fuel tank, and the other is kind of how fast you dispense the fuel, or how fast you use up the fuel when you drive. And so I think it's like these basic conceptions where they hang us up as an industry is, right, if we're not really clear on just the vocabulary and the terms and these basic concepts, then next thing you know, I've seen like really well-educated utilities who are projecting how much power they need for all of the trucks that will be deployed in their region, right? And and they have to make some assumptions around like how long charge dwell time is a great one, right? Charge dwell time relates those two, kilowatts, kilowatt hours. How many hours do you have to charge these trucks? Do you have to charge them all at once, or can you stagger them, right? And so I think if you make some assumptions there that seem pretty basic, you can wind up at some really numbers that are really far off, right? And it comes back to this just shared knowledge we're trying to develop. So I guess, how do we get better at that? I think it's really, kind of having more dialogues. It's what NACFE is really good at, right? Bring people together, to go through the basics and the learning, and let's learn from what went well, and let's learn from what hasn't gone so well. Like you guys
Yeah.
did with the Run on Less program, for example.
Let's talk about the company. So you started Motiv, and what was sort of the original ideas, and how has that changed over the years? And what's the product portfolio now, Jim? I mean, it's pretty important, because if we're saying that we're in a growth part here, how is Motiv ready to take advantage of that?
Yeah, thanks, Mike, for that question. It's been a good journey. So when I started Motive, it was the same vision: free fleets from fossil fuel. But we really started and kind of have been growing our footprint and focus along the kind of supply chain, and starting with the core technology. So the powertrain, right? Looking at batteries, motors, and that piece of the vehicle. And I started there because it struck me that it was the area of the vehicle that the kind of, conventional balance of the industry had kind of the least expertise in. It was the newest technology. And maybe if we could do that well, that would help move the industry forward. And I remember actually seeing a talk by one of the Tesla founders about ABS testing of the Roadster, and how all the complexity of controlling, the wheels, both braking and motoring, was all in software. And so when they inevitably failed their ABS test, they just made some software changes. And I thought, these electric vehicles, it's not that they're simpler than gas vehicles, they're just mechanically simpler than gas vehicles. The complexity shifts in the software. So I started Motive with kind of that idea, and over the years we built some initial pilot vehicles, and we developed relationships with end user fleets, and about 5 years ago we made the pivot to kind of recognition that we could serve the market better as an OEM and providing an entire vehicle. And so we've been on that journey to move beyond the powertrain and supply complete vehicles as strip chassis and cab chassis and such. And I would say that now we're realizing, as we talk to these two fleets, to large fleets, that the truck is really just one part of a very complicated ecosystem. And I think we're at our core, we're like a truck technology company, but what we found is that the data is just as important, and so we provide, telematics and data reporting to help fleets evaluate their trucks, and we help them with charge infrastructure and that whole kilowatt versus kilowatt hour dilemma. And the other pieces of the ecosystem. The driver is kind of a key piece of this, right? Designing our truck really around the driver, taking that opportunity, since we don't have an engine to design around anymore. And so really now our product portfolio are strip chassis, step vans, great for delivery applications, and now our new Argo cab chassis, and we have our smaller cab chassis as well. So we're trying to serve the entire medium duty vehicle market.
Yeah, and you said something that I think about like daily in this work, and that is that the battery electric vehicle is simpler. It just is. And you said mechanically simpler. I think that's probably the right term. I mean, there's like a lot of software complexity and so forth that you mentioned, but we've got that with diesel trucks and others as well, with a whole lot of software and intelligence and so forth to deal with. But I didn't. A lot of the people in the NACFE team will say things like, we only had so many manufacturers for 50 years. And now if you count them up, there's like, not just 10, but 50. And so I look at it and go, well, why are there so many people thinking they can build these trucks and be a commercial OEM? I think at the heart of it, Jim, is because it's easier with a battery electric truck to build one. Now, there's a lot more things that you're mentioning: infrastructure, telematics, service and support, that are going to make you a successful one or not. But I think you'd agree with me, right? That this is basically an easier or simpler vehicle, and that opens up more people involved, but also lets us focus on some other things to be successful. And that's kind of the reason I think this is where we're headed.
Yeah, I really like the way that you put it. It's much easier to build one, right? I think that's what we see is building one is easy, but building lots of them reliably in the configuration and with everything that's needed for a fleet to scale and grow, and building them economically, and with we always say range, reliability, and cost. Those are the three key metrics for these electric trucks. That makes it a much harder challenge, and then plugging them into that fleet ecosystem. It's not just it's not just plug and play replacement with a fossil fuel vehicle, right? There's actually a lot that needs to change when fleets electrify beyond just the vehicle. So yeah, I'm pleased to see all of the new entrants and people who want to come in and help. There's a big problem, right? A lot of these fleets have really, tough sustainability goals, and it's a big challenge. And I think it's going to take some heavy lifting by a lot of legacy companies and a lot of new companies, to get there. I think Motiv is a little unique in that, being the longest running electric truck producer, we've got the relationships with the customers and the trust, really, to be able to be part of that conversation and be part of their solution. But we also don't face the innovator's dilemma of the large legacy OEMs, where they've got hundreds of millions or more invested in tooling and in a current fossil fuel solution, and that makes it, that provides some opportunities, but some obstacles as well.
You said the longest running electric vehicle manufacturer. You're like a traditional manufacturer only building EVs, which I can't even believe I said it right. But I thought about asking you this question. I wasn't so sure, but you've been through 15 years of this, and but there's some potential builders, competitors of yours that have been in it 15 months. You've got relationships. You've gone to the school of hard knocks on some of these different pieces. So I got to believe you're feeling confident that you're ready to go.
I mean, pros and cons to not having a history to rely on, right? I mean, it's been, I can't say we've batted 1,000 with every customer, right? But we've learned through it. And I think when we talk with fleets, the fact that we've been here 15 years, they know we're going to be here another 15, right? And so that doesn't have to be as big of a part of the conversation. I think we've seen, well, you and I have seen over those 15 years a lot of comings and goings of companies, right? Flash in the pan, and and I think that's good. That creates disruption, and that helps make us all better, right? But I think if these fleets are making big bets, and they want to do it on people that they know are gonna continue to be around and support them through the thick and the thin.
Exactly. And as you said it, they many of your particular customers in these smaller vehicles are ones that are consumer facing brands who are shippers and carriers both, and they're trying to be aggressive here. They're also, I think, seeing that the heavier trucks are going to be even harder, because now you're talking about much bigger battery packs, weight, size, as well as much longer range and so forth. So I think part of this, I think there's a renewed and a bigger urgency on some of these smaller vehicles, because the bigger ones seem even harder. So I think that could be a pull for the marketplace you're working on in particular, Jim.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I think so too. I think it's that charge dwell time, kilowatts versus kilowatt hours. In medium duty, most of these are single shift operation. I think there's long haul trucks. If you've got to run a vehicle, we have some customers that can run our vehicles successfully 20 hours a day, but it's much more challenging, for the vehicle to do that, and infrastructure becomes a lot more complex. So yeah.
Oh, and that goes on and on. I mean, so if you bring up a really important point. I mean, I've heard you say this before, that dwell time. If you have a long dwell time, that's one of the keys to being able to successfully deploy electric trucks. And, things even like, where are you going to put the chargers? Well, put them at the place the truck's parked. There's a spot, or I say trucks and vans, in at the, kind of describing the same thing, but, just put them there. Charger's less expensive. The demand on the utilities lower. I mean, those are just elements of, what should be earlier versus later adoption. And sure feels like a lot of that's really happening right in front of us.
Yeah, it's a lot easier in medium duty, where you're not doing across the country long haul routes trying to, get that truck moving 24 hours a day. So, yeah.
You mentioned Run on Less, and you participated both Run on Less electric programs. We had one where we were focusing on, the single trucks and then scaling. Uh, maybe you talked favorably of it, so maybe I'm looking for a compliment, but also I'd also be, what else would you have wanted to see in the Run? But why is the Run important to a transformation like this? And but yeah, go ahead. What could we have done better?
Well, I thought it was great, and kudos to you guys and to our customer Purolator. I think you guys being able to get these fleets to put that data out there with McAfee as an independent third party, that's what we need. That's what other fleets are looking for, right? Real third party validated independent data that shows how these trucks perform. Like I said, they're making huge bets on electrification. They've got to transition their whole fleet, and and I think we all like making decisions based on data, and you guys fill a key gap in doing that. So maybe not so much what you could do better, but like, please do more of it. I think, the more data you guys bring to the industry, the better.
Jim, given your perseverance around, electric medium duty trucks, what's your one or two or three suggestions or advice that you've got for the rest of us out there really, trying to make this happen? What would you say to all of us who are out there working, maybe sometimes frustrated with this transformation? How do we get through it, and how do we be successful?
Well, I mean, I think doing hard things is rewarding, right? So that's one. Like, let's not lose sight of the wins, and I think sometimes we can, right? We look at all the gap that's still out there, and it's easy to kind of get a little discouraged, but there have been some great wins, and like Run on Less is a great example of that. And so I think let's remember what's working well, and let's build on that. And I think we have fleets out there that really are making material progress towards their goals. And I think the rest of us as an industry, we've got to listen. We've got to all be really good listeners too. That's one thing I've realized. If we're all trying to go through this disruptive time in the industry, we've got to all kind of listen and find those solutions that maybe aren't obvious from our own perspective, but when we can convene people and get us together with these different viewpoints, sometimes solutions emerge that aren't obvious in advance. And so I think we need to do more of that as we go through the future of this industry.
Thanks a lot, Jim. This has been really fun, and I appreciate you being on.
Well, I'm happy to be here, and congrats on your 99th podcast. Very exciting times.
Freight Efficiency with McAfee's Mike Rosen Friends.